It's Pearl, and so I had made an earlier post writing out what were some of the worst things that you could do if you were diagnosed with pneumonia. And so some of you asked that I do a Facebook Live, so I am. In case you don't know who I am, my name is Pearl, and I am an occupational therapist by background. I've been in the healthcare field for over 25 years, and much of my clients and the patients that we worked with were older adults and the elderly. And one of the things that we always told them was that it was so super important for them to get up and move. When they were in our skilled nursing facility, they were there for rehab, for their recovery, and we would go in and work with them. And especially if they had a risk for aspiration pneumonia, which is a problem swallowing, and so they would have an increased risk for getting pneumonia. And so what we would do is to tell them that it was really super important to not just lay in bed the entire day, that actually getting up would help to keep the lungs working and moving that fluid out from their lungs. So in case you don't know what pneumonia is, that is when you have an infection in your lungs that can clog up your air sacs. So in your lungs, you have your bronchus and all these tubes that end up in little air sacs and what's called alveoli. And hi, Pise. Hi, Remy. Hi, Zena. And if those get filled with fluid, either from a bacterial infection or a viral infection or from a fungal infection, that can itself get infected and just cause a whole cascade of problems. And so pneumonia can kill you. It really can. That's because if your body's not getting the oxygen that it needs, everything starts shutting down in your system. And so one of the most important things that we would do, hey Steph, that's my fellow OT, my colleague over there. So one of the things that we had them do was to get up and at least walk. Because lying there in bed, not moving at all, was the worst thing that you could do. Hey Carol, hi Zena. So let me show you a couple of things that, while I'm not assuming that you have pneumonia, and I hope you don't, but here are some ways that you can keep your lungs healthy, okay, and optimally functioning. So the reason why a lot of the people who die from pneumonia are the elderly is because they have not been keeping themselves in terms of their lungs healthy. They tend to be more sedentary. They tend to have other health issues that prevent them from having good lung capacity. And so while you're here, and feel free to share these tips with people that you do know who are elderly and are at greater risk for getting pneumonia, that it's never too late to start to do something good for yourself, okay? So a couple of things that we'll start talking about is just even breathing. A lot of us, and almost all of us, breathe from your upper chest. So when you breathe, you can feel just your chest rising and falling. So that's a very shallow breath, okay? It doesn't really get deep into your lungs. And so what we want is that, oh, Karen, let's see, she had pneumonia a few months ago and got sick for 2 weeks. Yeah, and her lungs hurt. Yeah, so optimally, we want to keep our lungs in a healthy state so that if we get knocked and hit by an illness, that our lungs have a little bit more leeway to recover versus if you're already in a compromised position, your lungs don't have a lot of wiggle room. So if you're doing something to help with your breathing, to help increase your lung capacity, you give yourself a little bit more wiggle room. So as I was talking about shallow breathing, a lot of times we just breathe from our upper chest, and when we breathe, we can see our ribs come up and down. But when you are doing diaphragmatic breathing, your diaphragm is down below, so in between your lungs and your tummy. That's your diaphragm, and singers are great with diaphragmatic breathing. They know all about it. And so how you can tell the difference between rib upper body breathing and diaphragmatic breathing is that you're actually going to see your belly expand. And that's, nobody likes to show like their belly, right? I know all about that. But in this case, you do want to let your belly go up, okay? So when you're breathing, if you picture inhaling and having that air go down deep past your lungs into your diaphragm, that'll help give you a visual as to where the airflow should go. So if you want to do it with me, you can put your hands on, like, underneath your chest, on top of your ribs and above your belly button. So if you take a deep breath in, okay, so this is a rib breath. This is just that. When you do a breathing from your diaphragm, it's your belly. It goes a deep. So if you can see my hands, I'll back up a little bit. So if you can see my hands, okay, you can see that my my chest is not moving up and down as much as down below here. Okay. Okay, so has everybody found their diaphragm? Put your hands on it. And this can take practice because honestly, not many of us breathe that way. And so breathing through your diaphragm is considered deep breathing. Okay? How's everybody doing with that? Hey, Vicky. Hey, Sherry. Hey, Willie. Haven't seen you in a long time. Okay, so that's diaphragmatic breathing. Give me a thumbs up if you got that going on. If you were successful with being able to do that with yourself. Okay? So again, the cues are to put your hands on your belly, and you should feel your belly rise and fall if you're doing the diaphragmatic breathing correctly. Okay, awesome. I'm getting some thumbs up. Karen, it really takes practice. It really does take practice because, again, we are such shallow breathers that it's a conscious effort to breathe through your belly. So practice it throughout your day. Aim for 10 throughout your day. If you're sitting on the potty because you're drinking a lot of fluids, as you should be, do it while you're sitting down. It might be easier doing it while you're standing up, but breathing through your belly is one thing. Okay, so here's another thing that we find is that because of all the screens, all of the media, a lot of our work, we tend to be in this forward-shouldered, collapsed, head forward, shoulders forward, ribs sunken in, back rounded, and we're looking at our screens, we're looking at our computer, and we're all kind of just crunched in and just sunken in, okay? All right, so experiment. In this position, see if you can take a deep breath, right? Even taking a diaphragm, even trying to breathe down from your belly is hard. Give me a thumbs up if you're giving that a shot, trying that out, okay? So again, in this collapsed forward position, much of the position that we hold when we're on our screens, on our devices, looking at things, okay? Try and take a deep breath. You really can't. Why? Because in this position, your ribs come all the way from your back and they attach to your sternum, which is this middle bone right here. That's what they crack when they do CPR. And then you have some free-floating ribs down here. Actually, no, they all come up. Okay, so when you're in this crunched position, everything is locked in. You have no room for your ribs to move. Okay, so our body likes balance. Our body does not like to be out of balance. When you're out of balance, you cause a whole bunch of problems and a whole bunch of diseases and issues and problems. And so even with your physical body, our body likes to have balance. So what we need to practice then is to go opposite of most of the time that you're spending. Okay, so if you're spending all your time in this forward flex position, you need to counter that by bringing your shoulders back and opening up your chest. Okay, and that also entails squeezing your shoulder blades back. Okay, so now in this upright position, how can you tell if you're upright? Your shoulders and your hips should line up. When you're not in alignment, your shoulders are forward and away from your hips, and your head is usually hanging off. Okay. So when you are in alignment, your ears are over your shoulders are lined up with your hips. Okay. Now in this upright position, see if you can take a deep breath. Okay, everybody give that a shot together. Okay, how many found that easier to breathe? Okay, so in countering that, what we need to practice then is bringing our shoulders back, shoulder rolls, where you draw a circle with your shoulder and squeeze your shoulder blades back together. Okay, that's a good start. Feels really good with your shoulders. Okay, give me a thumbs up if that's starting to feel, if you're doing this with me and that feels good. Okay, another thing is to do where you are making chicken wings. Okay, so if you don't have to stick your elbows out, but if you're not used to doing it, it just helps to give you a little bit more of a visual and more of an aim. So if you stick your shoulders, your elbows out, and you squeeze your shoulder blades together. So your shoulder blades are here, right? The bone that usually itches, this triangular bone here. Okay, so when you squeeze those together, and some of you might be weak. Some of you might have some weak muscles back there, which means that you need to work that out even more. So squeezing that together, okay? And then while you're doing this, you can even tip your head back, because why? That even stretches your ribs more. So this counteracts that collapsed rib position. When you bring your chest up, when you tilt your head up, that stretches everything in between here. Okay, so you're opening, you're stretching, you're giving your ribs room to move. So now in this position, this might be a little bit more advanced, but nothing to say that you can't keep practicing, is to now try to breathe in through your belly. Give me a thumbs up if you're able to do that. Okay. Okay, so all of those things help with getting your ribs moving, stretched out, giving it space to move so that you can take the deep breaths, okay? So if you're trying to take a deep breath in this hunched position, you can't get very far. So you have to work on your posture. Okay, so posture, which allows your lungs to breathe. Okay. All right, what's another thing to do that you can help with increasing your lung capacity? So I know we're all sheltering in places for most of us. In California, we definitely are. But we're still allowed to go out and exercise. If you don't feel like you can, if you don't feel comfortable going outside, you can walk the length of your house. They even have walking videos, walking exercise videos where you can get your steps in. Okay, so, but if you notice that if you haven't exercised in a very long time, you get out of breath very quickly, right? Anybody? Yeah? Okay. So the more you exercise, the more your lung capacity builds. So if you start, and I have some marathon running friends, God bless you, not my thing, but you start out not having a lot of capacity for it because of just the effort that it takes for your breathing, okay, and your endurance, and how long it takes for you to start getting out of breath. And so the more you do, the better it is. So again, the last and the worst thing you can do if someone has pneumonia is to have them stay in bed and rest and not move. That will allow the fluid to continue to accumulate, get sticky, and then start getting little adhesions, and then it just keeps getting, starts spiraling downward. So if you have anybody who has pneumonia, have them sit up, have them take some walks, have them practice the deep breathing. Okay, have them breathe with you. If they start coughing, that's okay. That's actually really good. The coughing helps to dislodge some of the fluid and helps to move it up and out. So coughing is good. The other thing you can do is if you're with that person who has coughing, and it doesn't even have to be pneumonia, but just coughing in general, I do this with my kids, is I'll get behind them, and if their back is here, I'll just start playing their back like a bongo, okay? So I'm giving some pretty decent pressure because I'm trying to move the fluid. So if I'm just, doing a little pat here, that's not gonna do too much. So you wanna give a good, for those of you who spank, a good spanking, okay? Or bongos, however you want, okay? So that's something that you can do for somebody that might have coughing going on, to help loosen the phlegm, the mucus, the fluids that's in their lungs, okay? The other thing you can work on is just even holding your breath. So you can, because again, that goes to your lung capacity. So if you can only hold your breath for 15 seconds, aim for 20, then 25, and that just helps with, again, stretching out your air sacs so that you have more capacity, so that you can continue to optimize what your lungs are able to do. Okay, so are there any questions? I can actually see your messages. Hey, Christine. Yeah, I know your parents are older, and so you might want to share some of these tips with them, to have them do the deep breathing, have them practice stretching out their chest, spreading their chest, having them squeeze their shoulder blades back together. Okay, so that's for any of you. So if you anybody have any questions, you're welcome. Hopefully this was helpful. I'm gonna have this public, I believe, so that you can, share. With COPD, it's tough because their lungs are already incapacitated, so that does put them at a higher risk. So COPD is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. You can get that from having a history of smoking. You can get that from a history of smoking. So right now, if you are a smoker, this would not be a good time. This would be a great time to kick the habit, okay? Because as much as your lungs are incapacitated, you're just at higher risk for having complications and problems, okay? And yes, they should absolutely try to walk, even if it's in their house. As much movement, anything that gets their lungs breathing, if they can get a little bit, where they're a little bit out of breath, where they're having to take deeper breaths, have them practice getting into a good posture. And if they have a hard time, walk around like this. Walk around with your shoulders back on your hips. Walk around with some attitude. It's okay. Okay? That keeps your shoulders up. It keeps your shoulders back. It keeps your chest upward. And it helps to keep them in the posture as they're walking. Okay? All right, so I am going to put this public so that it can be shared. And any other questions? And if you have any questions after this is over, I'll monitor this and answer any questions. And if there's anything additional you would like me to add to, I would be happy to. Okay, thanks for watching, and I hope this was helpful. God bless.